You are listening to KSKQ 89.5 FM, Ashland, Oregon, and KSKQ Translator K231CW 94.1 FM, Medford, Oregon. It is now time for a rather new show here on KSKQ. It is the 7th radio broadcast for the Eartheart radio show, and we hope you will enjoy. Kick back and enjoy it at KSKQ.
Blessings and welcome to Eartheart Radio. Finally beginning to awaken from the illusion of separateness and broadcasting live from the KSKQ studios in beautiful Ashland, Oregon. Here's your host, Shankara Das.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kincaid, for those great words, man. I am Shankara, a.k.a. Derek Moody. I also host the Church of Rock radio show on Sunday evenings right here at KSKQ. Thank you for tuning in to Eartheart Radio Show. We have a great show lined up today. I'm so excited. I say that every week, but it's true, man. Really true. We are going to be speaking with a legend in the music business and just a very interesting human being and soul. We will be speaking with the one and only Geza X very shortly about his experiences with DMT and other things. We will also be spotlighting a saint today, as we always do on the show. We've got positive news coming up and some good music. I want to say a special hello to Kelly and Joey Miles over in Bandon, Oregon. Yeah, they're tuning in over in Bandon, and there is actually talk of syndicating the Eartheart radio show very soon, which means we would be on 3 FM frequencies if that happens. So I'm crossing my fingers, crossing my toes, and I guess I'll go ahead and cross my eyes. Why not, man? Next week on the show, we're going to have a legendary interview with Baba Bhagavan Das. He was on my other radio show about a year ago, and I'm telling you, it was a 30-minute conversation that blew me away. So next week, I'll rerun the interview with the legendary Bhagavan Das right here at Eartheart Radio. Other upcoming guests on the show include Peter Mount Shasta. We've got Ganesha Das coming on the show, Gaia Udron, and Julie Akins. So thanks to all the folks that do support. And I want to remind you, we do have a YouTube channel. That's right. It's nonprofit. It is Eartheart Radio on YouTube. And every single show we've done on there is available for you to listen anytime you'd like. Right now, my friends, I'm very happy to bring this guy on the line. If everything works out according to plan, it should sound fine. Please let me give him a little introduction to Geza before I bring him on. He's eccentric. He's diverse. He's a legendary producer of both underground classics and hit songs, such as the song by Meredith Hunter called Bitch. It was a hit song on radio and video. Geza has been involved in the music business for decades, and then there's the non-musical side of Geza X. That's the side we are focusing in on today. Geza had an experience with DMT that I heard about while watching YouTube. And with no further blabbering, let's let Geza do the blabbering. Please welcome Geza X to the Eartheart Radio Show. Hi, Geza. Hello, are you there? Well, hang on a second, Geza. There's a problem. I think I have the wrong cord plugged in, perhaps. Something's going on here. Let me try this one. Are you there, Geza?
Hello?
Okay, now we've got you. I apologize.
Cool. No worries. First of all, Derek, my friend, blessings, and I want to really congratulate you on your syndication. I just hope that this sort of positive stuff and these messages about enlightenment and spirituality get out, more to the regular world, because, we live in a troubled world. Of course, the world has always been troubled, and spirituality in some ways has always taken a back seat. But there's a lot of people lighting up here and there, and they pass the message. Once you have sort of seen something special, you can't help but talking about it, And if I don't unload this story every now and then, I used to say, I go crazy. It's like I have to talk about this, at least once every few months to someone who's willing to listen. So it was such an extraordinary experience, as there's literally been no turning back in my life. And the way that it started was there's a little background. I go to Burning Man a lot, or used to, and some of my burner friends and I decided that we wanted to start a religion, right? And this was called this was going to be called the Church of Izo, and the IZO was sort of like just symbols, the zeta factor bringing together I and O being, the universal circle of all things.
Yeah.
And we tried a lot of different things. First of all, it was like kind of a study of comparative religions. Then it was sort of like a crazy church of the subgenius kind of weirdness, because we like Dada and humor. But what happened was, none of that kind of stuck. And so at my urging, what we adopted was a little different tack. We decided to make it a religion based on the scientific method, since all other religions had sort of in one way or the other, sort of like, not necessarily failed, but like, not managed to, produce concrete enough evidence.
Right.
We tried to use the scientific method, which was that we would form hypotheses, and then we would do experiments, and then we would write up our conclusions. And we were going to have, we still do actually, it's small, but we were going to archive all of this stuff, for posterity in case something happened. Well, what happened was at one point, one of the other persons, his name is Tommy, Tommy Big Fingers was his burner name, and Timothy Martin's his regular name. He hooked us up with a person who I'm not going to name his name because DMT is still mostly illegal, except I believe in Oakland, California, of all places.
Wild.
But he hooked us up with an actual practitioner who had administered, like a number of these trips. And the guy, comes in with one of those volcano things that you use to bake pot into like a balloon that you inhale and get this concentrated dose of pot, except he put pure DMT. The 5-MeO kind is the kind that is recommended for this particular experience. There's been a book written about it, beautiful book called The Spirit Molecule. I held off on reading it till after I had my experience because I wanted to just have the experience like raw or random,
Yeah, you didn't want to have like a tainted experience where you were pre-expecting something that might have been written in the book or something.
Correct, exactly. We did this. It was on a holiday. It was a vacation. Just happened to be Easter Sunday of all days. And that day, there was a little minor earthquake as the practitioner, I'll just call him D, was bringing the volcano and all of his, like props down the stairs to my house. And so, I thought that was like, interesting. We like our coincidences, but I didn't, try not to make too much of it, But it was Easter Sunday. There was an earthquake right when he was bringing the goods in. And what he did was he set up a little, like just a little tiny gong and some like, sweet spiritual kind of music, like sort of trancey going on in the background. And there was 3 of us that took the stuff, and we all had entirely different trips, One person had a very physical body experience, which cleared out all of his muscle problems and gave him like a chiropractic treatment. I mean, he was doing the most contorted, bizarre things on the couch. And then afterwards, he said, "My God, my body feels totally like straightened out." And
Wow.
then another person had an experience that was like very, very different, but my experience was 100% spiritual, and I have stopped calling it a drug trip. It's like it's just too cute to say I found God on a LSD, and people tend to discount that. So what I did was afterwards I did a bunch of research and discovered that what had happened to me was identical to the DMT, of course, to an NDE, a near-death experience. And when you see these near-death experiencers on YouTube and you read their accounts, that's exactly what happened to me. I also think that this is very similar to what happens in alien abduction experiences. because I think that you actually go into a formless place, and that your mind, whatever is still connected, adds the pictures. And so, people most likely through the ages have experienced this in various ways.
So, Geza,
but I've come to the...
When you say,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but when you say formless place, are you kind of referring to the place we go to before and after we are in these bodies?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll get to that, because it's very definitely a part of this,
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I've post this experience, I've sort of done a lot of research and put together, sort of my impressions of what it meant, of course, because I was seriously confused when I came back. This is like, when the Kundalini, they have this story that, when the Kundalini rises, if you're not ready for it, you could actually go mad. What I was going mad with was the inability to understand how this relates to life itself. The experience was so much more powerful and more important than anything in my life afterward. And so, what I have decided, sort of as my explanation, is that this is the fundamental shamanic experience that happens across all cultures, and that basically is the starting point, the reference point from which all religions have emerged, and all, sort of like spiritual understandings. It's all one thing. It's what the Rosicrucians called a split second in eternity, which basically in the Hindu folklore, it's called enlightenment. So I accidentally, just by some luck, got the enlightenment hit.
That's great. That's
which
so
I
great.
believe is simply analogous. It's the same thing as the near-death experience, and in some cases the UFO experiences, although those are sort of a darker version.
It's like a rebirth.
Yeah. And even with the Gospels, there's this thing about the Eucharist. The "you" just means Eucharist. If you translate the Greek, it just means good character. And that's what this experience brings to all people who experience it. People who come back from near-death experiences, they're transformed. They become just little kittens of love. And all they want to do is be of service. And they're humble. And they're not about their ego anymore. They realize how totally silly any kind of ego posturing or fronting or posing is. And that's what happened to me. Now, of course, the world is a wicked place. And over the many years, 10 years since that's happened, I got sucked back into a lot of drama and, even back into drugs. And I had to do a lot of work to kind of pop back out of it, which, I'm clean now. And thank goodness, But I'm no longer reluctant to say the word God. I didn't see a judgmental God per se, but what I experienced was a transformative, loving force. So let me just go into how this happened, if you're kind of ready for this story itself.
Should we tell somebody, like in a nutshell, in case somebody's listening and doesn't know what DMT is? Should we just briefly describe what is DMT before you get into that experience, or no?
Absolutely, you're so right.
Okay.
And you have such a nice, polite way of posing things. I just love it. You're like a non-interviewer with great interview chops.
Thank you, man.
DMT is a psychedelic that kind of like appeared on the scene in the 60s, sort of like LSD, but it's not like LSD. If you look at the molecule, DMT is one of the simplest molecules there is, whereas LSD has all of these, it's very complex and sort of fractal-like. But they have at their core, DMT, magic mushrooms, LSD, all have like at the center of them the same molecule. And it is strangely also the same chemical that your brain releases from the pineal gland when you die. I had to do all this research to put all this together because, of course, I was just like, I'm very scientifically oriented, having been an engineer for many years. And um, so I was just like clutching at straws trying to figure out what is this. It's also in mother's milk. So that bond between mother and child, when you're a kid, if you remember back that far, it's like telepathy between you and your mother in the early days. And my mother weirdly breastfed me till I was about 4 because I couldn't drink regular milk. I would vomit everything up. So,
I have heard of that before. I've heard of others, getting the breast milk until later on for reasons like that.
I experienced that telepathy with my mother for the first 4 years of my life. It was weird, and it was good weird, till she went crazy and it became bad weird. But anyways, so DMT is a naturally occurring substance. They extract it from either the back of a certain frog. They scrape it off of this frog's back, and then they heat it up and smoke it. So there's the witch folklore about the frogs. Or they take the bark of a certain tree, and they take a shit ton of it, and they boil it down. And it's also, that bark is a component of ayahuasca, which is that and a number of other products, which include a MEO inhibitor, so that the 15-minute DMT trip lasts for like overnight, which I don't think I could have tolerated that. And there's a lot of vomiting and stuff when you take ayahuasca.
Yeah, I have I have done the ayahuasca before. There's a temple here in Williams, Oregon, that's a Peruvian temple so I have had a brief experience one time with it.
Yeah, and because of the length of the trip and the physical torments you experience on ayahuasca, it's like a lot more deep and compound of an experience. And you go to heaven, you go to hell, you go all over the place, And, I would be interested in hearing your story at some point in the future, maybe just on the phone or something.
Of course.
But DMT is like a 15-minute, very clean version of that. And what happened to me was, I was told that there might be hallucinations. Well, I hesitate to call what happened to me hallucinations. It was a full-on other world that I entered, but we'll get to that. So in 15 minutes, mind you, everything I'm going to try and describe happened in 15 minutes. And the thing is that time was kind of compressed like in a dream,
Yeah.
And it had certain qualities of a dream because when I was brought out of it, it was right at the exact same time. The trip literally finished when the guy out here, the practitioner, he knew what he was doing, hit the little gong to bring me back, and that was literally at the exact end of this thing. So it was a very compact experience for me. I didn't see any kind of like hippie hallucinations at all. I didn't have any kind of an experience I went in with like a psychological question because I thought that's how it was going to go, that this was going to be one of those things where I can take some kind of like profound, life question, about my childhood or something like that. This went so far beyond that as to like literally make that type of psychological thing just pointless. This is like really like in the realm of the gods,
Wow.
And so what happened was, okay, so, I smoked the stuff out of the, the atomizer or whatever. And you have to take, at least 3 humongous hits in order to go to the beyond part of the trip. And so the first 2 you can take it yourself, but after that your body shuts off for a while. It's like completely like reboots your body. And so the third puff usually has to be blown into your mouth by the person that's doing it.
Interesting.
And so anyways, I took the 3 puffs and what happened next was really surprising because at first I still was, trying to be all fidgety and psychological, and I sat up and started to like give a dissertation, and they just all, there were several people, with me, my wife, this practitioner, a couple of other people that were going to take trips too, and they just kind of pushed me down gently, and I laid back down, and it was being filmed too. I've got a film of it, and because it was this, scientific experiment, and I laid back down, and then it started to happen. And what happened was, and the last thing I heard this guy saying was, "Don't be scared, everything's fine." Some people get a little scared, and I just put my thumb up and said, "Everything's cool." And he was trying to give me more DMT, and I was like, "No, this is exactly the right amount." I could just tell somehow.
Yeah.
And I started to basically die in a way. But what happened really was that my body was being completely shut off or silenced. But my memory bank, luckily, was still going, right?
Yeah.
So what happened was I started to feel like I was like on a hospital gurney or something, and then I was being rolled into this like area, and I had been told beforehand to look for the light. Isn't this like so classic? To look for the light and to turn towards it and to go to the light.
So did you?
And I did. I had to.
Okay.
I had to turn my imaginary head until I saw the light, and then in my mind, I projected myself towards it. And what it did was it opened up like sort of like almost I guess I'll just call it a vagina shape, sort of like, an ellipse, that was pointing at both ends. But it didn't look like the sort of like the St. Peter's pearly gates. I guess it could have in another description. It didn't look like the Hebrew lettering with the fire, although I guess it could have in another description. And I say this on purpose because I believe there's a lot of different ways you can perceive that. But to me, it looked like neon from the future. It was like purplish neon from the future with a very, very alien technology kind of like vibe to it.
Wow.
And I went towards it. It was like really purple white, and this gurney just was rolling me in. And as I rolled through it from my feet all the way to my head, gradually, I felt myself, two things were happening. I felt myself sort of splitting in half as my body sort of like my physical body kind of just peeled away. And what I am very definite about was I felt my emotional body. There's a lot of descriptions of these bodies in the Sanskrit and stuff, and they show all of these shells and auras, and I'm sure that that's true. Other people have done this in various ways and experienced this in various ways, but my experience was very, very simple, clean, and uncomplicated. It was that my physical body was peeling away from my emotional body, and that my emotional body was going through this hoop. And as it went through the hoop, I could feel it being cleansed and purified. My emotions, which were all that remained, being cleansed and purified. And I was rolling through this thing. And as it kind of got to like the middle, I started to feel this ecstasy, this exact feeling like of nirvana.
Like bliss.
And I felt this total bliss, and all of the struggles of my life and all the scheming and the mad stuff that we have to do to survive just disappeared as my body was peeled away. And it was literally as if like you were taking a handkerchief off of a statue or something.
Wow.
And that was the handkerchief was my memories, my name, my rank, my serial number, my entire life. I forgot my entire life.
That's awesome.
As this experience was happening.
Well,
and my emotional body continued through. Yeah.
Baba Ram Dass said one time you have to give it all up in order to get it all. So that's a perfect example of that.
I think that's the same thing that Jesus was said, that for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven is sort of like trying to jam a camel through the eye of a needle, because you're taking too much stuff with you.
Yes.
So yeah, you got to give up all the junk. And I guess I was just emotionally prepared to do this in the most like sort of uncomplicated manner possible, because I know that this can happen in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So as I passed through this thing and I was being purified, I started crying, weeping, weeping, weeping. And I was weeping and weeping and weeping, saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, because it was so much relief. Even though I was forgetting my entire life, literally, I forgot my name, I forgot who I was, I forgot all of Earth, I forgot my entire life, but I was still me.
See,
I was the...
Like if the whole world could just do that at the same time and just reboot everybody spiritually, boy, that'd be the answer. I would think.
I've been thinking about that ever since. You're so correct. So I was crying and crying and crying and just saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I didn't know until months later why I was saying thank you, thank you, thank you. I thought it was just because I was experiencing so much bliss and relief, but it wasn't. I was saying thank you because it's so easy to die.
Wow.
It's like painless, and it's not scary. It's just like you continue as if nothing happened. And I think of like caterpillar and a butterfly and how it gets in a cocoon and it's transformed into an entirely different being that's able to fly.
Yeah.
And it probably has all new thoughts, memories, and experiences. And yet it came out of the same stuff. So
good
when
analogy.
I finally passed through this, I was filled with this like sort of like feeling of extreme forgiveness. And I thought that once again, that was why I was weeping, because I was going, thank you, thank you, thank you. I felt like I was being cleansed and purified and forgiven all at once.
That's beautiful.
But thanks, man. But not by God or a deity or something like that. It was just like in the air as this presence, thick golden liquid, almost like a liquid on earth or like air. This place I was going into was filled with forgiving love.
Wow.
And that was what the sort of like the atmosphere of that was. And it was thick. You could feel it like a substance, like I said, like water. So, and as I passed through the other side, this is the funniest part. There's a couple of funny parts to this. As I passed through the other side, I fell out of a hole in the sky onto solid ground. And I looked up and it was like that 30 feet up. I'd fallen from like 30 feet up onto the ground. And I was just as stoned on DMT and the other side as I was here. I was still all wobbly. I could just barely move. I kind of, managed to kind of like get myself up and sort of like sit up. And I saw in the distance this thing that sort of looked like a sunflower. I didn't know what it was. As it turns out, it was like almost like an amphitheater with all of these beings in it. But from the distance, it looked like a sunflower with like all of the seeds, and two of the seeds kind of went and kind of flew out of it, right out of the edge of it to meet me, two or three of them, and I couldn't see their faces or their hands. It was like those pictures of the Grim Reaper where it's all black. It was like negative space.
Wow.
But they were wearing really cute clothes like ravers. They were dressed in like the cutest raver clothes, burner type clothes.
Like all hip.
And, yeah. And their vibe was just immensely loving and sweet, like when people like sort of grab you and take you into a tent at Burning Man, if you've ever done that or been to a festival, and you're listening
totally.
to great music and stuff. Well, they gathered me up and they put my arms around their shoulders because I was still like just so stoned I couldn't fucking hardly think. And I literally had forgotten my life, and I was looking at them. I couldn't see their faces or their eyes, but I looked into their faces. I noticed that my hands, I could still see them, and they were like sort of like shiny,
Yeah.
And I was in this state of total nirvana, and I was like looking at them with this helpless look, like, what the fuck just happened?
We can't cuss on that radio because of the FCC. We have some rules.
Yeah, my bad.
And by the way, Geza, I would like to take this moment, if you would allow me. I would like to say you are listening to KSKQ Radio. You're listening to the Eartheart Radio Show with my guest, Geza X, who we are talking about his experience with DMT. Thank you for tuning in today. And Geza, sorry to interrupt.
No worries, man. So, perfect timing, actually. So they gathered me up, and I sort of looked helplessly into their invisible eyes, and I was just like, what just happened? And I don't understand. And I could just like feel them rolling their invisible eyes and going, yeah, we know, sort of shaking their invisible heads. And
We
saying,
know.
That's a bad place. That's a bad place that you just came from. Everything's fine now. And then they said, come. We want to show you to the biggest party in the universe. We're going to take you. You want it ready to go? Do you want to go? And I was like, yeah.
Let's go.
And then they somehow just me to the sunflower thing, and I found out that it was sort of like an amphitheater with all of these other creatures like them, but though they were all asleep in some kind of like Buddhist repose, right? Laying in these sort of furrows in the ground, which was as solid as Earth.
Right.
And yet it was there was no outside, like everything outside of this area, talk about a flat Earth philosophy, everything outside of this area was just sort of like neutral gray, like the exact middle gray that you would find in a set of colors or something like that, just neutral gray.
Interesting.
And then this sort of golden orb of love juice, and then this amphitheater with like thousands and thousands of beings in it. I couldn't tell how many, but it was sort of finite, and there was only one other like cat standing up. And to this day, I don't know who he was, but there was another cat standing up, and I could see his body. He sort of looked like, like one of those kind of like guys that had like, he had long hair and sort of like these like, parachute pants or something and no shirt on. And he looked a little scruffy, and I was going, is this another cat like me that just like fell from
the bad place,
hole in the sky, and he was the only one like standing sort of towards the middle though, and so what happened was these friends, as I call them, I was in some kind of, you might call it telepathic communication, but it was much more than that, because all of the creatures in this space had this feeling of like first person plural. I believe that was the real God, first person
Wow.
plural. Sort of like the Hindu pantheon or something,
Yeah.
where we are one, we the people, we are one. I think that phrase "we the people" in the whatever the dingy ding is so important, and that stuff, that all one thing on the Dr. Bronner soap. I think that Dr. Bronner was blind, and I think he has had some mystical experiences.
I love to read those Dr. Bronner's labels, man. They're great to read.
Right?
There's so much great
all
stuff
one,
on those labels,
all
man.
One,
hey, Geza, I hate to tell you, but I'm running out of time as far as my segment here. So if we could maybe get, I don't mean to rush you along, but I kind of have to. So if you want to wrap up the story so we can...
I'm almost done. How much time?
Just a few minutes.
Okay. So here's basically what happened. They threaded me through the crowd, and I got to experience all these different beings, sort of semi-telepathically, but more like we were all one force. And it was lovely, I got to ask one question from my guides. I said, "Can you have sex here?" They looked at me with their invisible eyes, and they said, "Well, sure you can, but why would you want to?"
Right.
And then I realized, with this feeling of nirvana, nothing could ever top this ecstasy. And then they guided me to one empty depression in the ground, and it was like approximately at 2:30 and about 3 rows in, if you look at a clock.
Yeah.
And they said, "Here, lay down here." And I was like, it was the first moment where I had a little, not fear, but a little discomfort and confusion.
Trepidation.
I was like, I just didn't know what they meant. They said, "Go ahead, lay down here. Everything's going to be fine." And I laid down in this depression, and I laid back, and I remember my last thought there was like, well, if this is how it ends, there really is justice in the universe. And right as I finished the word universe, my guide on this side hit the gong and brought me back out of the trip.
Amazing. That is an amazing tale.
So I spent the next 4 years trying to figure out what all this meant. But anyways, That's the story.
And then you get a guy like me calling saying, hey, can we talk about your DMT experience on the radio?
Isn't that amazing?
Funny. It is.
Because you know what? Because there really is a God force on this side.
For
and
sure.
It's hard to understand how it works, but I think those friends on that side, they were angelic beings. It had all the earmarks of like sort of the Christian heaven, but with, without the harps, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And they were all of love, service, and humility. But I think that those beings have the ability possibly to, be with us sometimes, and to even affect things in our lives in a way that we cannot understand.
Perhaps guiding us with subconsciously. We know it, but we don't remember it until we're like out of the body ourselves.
They act through other people, and so the people that we love on this side are really, really super important. And the more people that we love, the more important it becomes and the more good that we're able to do.
On that note, I want to say thanks a million to my guest, Geza X, in Los Angeles, I presume, today, and taking the time to call in to speak with us, man. It's been great, Geza. We can maybe continue talking another time off the air just to share more experiences. And I thank you for taking the time today to do this.
You're the best. I'm so glad I met you.
Oh, ditto, man. I feel the same way. And thanks for you sent me some cool stuff in the mail recently. I sent Geza some photos to autograph, and I actually gave that to my friend Rick, who's listening right now in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So hello, Rick, and thanks to thank you, Geza.
I still play the Geza X character sometimes, but I know that it's like just something that I created, it's like it's like for show. But this is nowadays the real me.
Hey, you know what? I love the real you. And keep in touch, Geza, okay?
Yeah. Thanks so much. Signing off.
Adios, my brother, and blessings to you.
Okay.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There you have it. The Eartheart Radio chat with Geza X. Now, half of you are probably going, wow, that was great. And then there's some of you going, what in the heck just happened? Hello to all my friends listening today. Hello to Jason and Chai over in Grants Pass, Oregon. Hello to Christy and Arthur and Don in Omaha, Nebraska. Rick in Kenosha. I already said hello to you. Sister Tracy is tuned in right here in Ashland, Oregon, South Ashland with little Jetson. And she'll be on the radio tonight at 7 p.m. with the Almighty Church of Rock radio show. We will spotlight a saint, and I've got positive news on the way. But I will tell you, the Rogue Valley Messenger is proud to be partner of KSKQ. The Messenger strives to publish fun, smart, and engaging articles, from music and food reviews to investigative stories that ask tough questions and consider the successes and failures of local government agencies. Providing as much news, entertainment, and information that they can pack into each issue every month, the Messenger also hosts a comprehensive listing of the region's events and cultural happenings. Interested in the Rogue Valley's nonprofit events and news publication? You can email info@roguevalley.messenger.com or head over to www.roguevalley.messenger.com for more information.
Thanks for listening to Eartheart Radio. Love everyone. Serve the people. Remember God. KSKQ.
You are listening to KSKQ 89.5 FM Ashland and KSKQ Translator K231 94.1 FM Medford, Oregon. Moody, a.k.a. Shankara Das, here at Eartheart Radio Show. Thank you to my guest Geza X for a great chat a while ago about the molecule known as the spirit molecule, DMT. That was enlightening for me and fun and a little informative. And Geza, boy, he's a great talker. I really dig listening to that cat. Support for KSKQ comes from Southern Oregon Jobs with Justice, sponsors of the Ashland Community Peace Meal, offering a free community meal in Ashland's Pioneer Hall every Thursday at 5 p.m. For more information, call 541-841-8341 or visit soswj.org. That KSKQ thanks Southern Oregon Jobs with Justice, and of course all of our underwriters. Thanks for being here at Eartheart Radio Show. Next week on the show, we're going to rerun an interview with Baba Bhagavan Das, who is what you just heard a minute ago from the Now album that was produced by Mike D of the Beastie Boys. Raghupati was the name of that. So next week, you'll hear a great chat with Baba Bhagavan Das about how he left the country in 1960 and came back in 70. So he skipped the 60s and studied with a bunch of Indians in caves all over India and Tibet. You're going to hear about those stories next week. Also coming up on the show, our city councilwoman, Julie Akins, is going to be our guest, talking about how she transforms school buses into homes for people that need homes, families that need homes. And these things are amazing. They're like little houses on wheels. They're these buses they get, and they do transform them. So Julia will be coming on, speaking about that and so much more, basically selfless service. Gaia Yudran, who is one of the people that established the Tashi Choling Buddhist Temple, the Temple for Buddhist Studies. She'll be coming on to talk about that, which will be amazing. And Ganesha Das will be my guest coming up soon, discussing kirtan and devotion and playing music from his album. But every week on the show, I like to spotlight a different saint or a high-frequency being, and today, well, is no exception at all.
Saints, angels, avatars, sages, yogis, holy men, medicine women, helpers, elders, revolutionaries, and advocates of love. Today we honor and show love, respect, and gratitude.
Today, I'm going to spotlight a saint by the name of Saint Christopher. That's right, man. Every week I like to acknowledge somebody that's, well, either a real figure or a historical figure that has done a lot of good for humankind and our consciousness, and as far as people that are good people. Saint Christopher is venerated by several Christian denominations as a martyr killed in the reign of the 3rd century Roman Emperor Decius, who reigned 249 through 251. His most famous legend tells that St. Christopher carried a child who was unknown to him across a river before the child revealed himself as Christ. Therefore, he is the patron saint of travelers, and small images of him are often worn around the neck, on a bracelet, carried in a pocket, or placed in a vehicle. Legends about the life and death of St. Christopher first appeared in Greece in the 6th century and had spread to France by the 9th century. It is said that St. Christopher was originally called Reprobus. Once he met a hermit who instructed him in the Christian faith. Christopher asked how he could serve Christ, and the hermit suggested that because of his size and strength, he was supposedly 7.5 foot tall, he could assist people to cross a dangerous river where they were perishing every time they attempted to get across. After Christopher had performed this service for some time, a little child asked him to take him across the river. During the crossing, the river became swollen, and the child seemed as heavy as lead, so much that Christopher could barely himself carry the child. It was getting more difficult. When he finally did reach the other side, he said to the child, "You've put me in the greatest danger. I don't think the whole world could have been as heavy as you were." The child replied, "You had on your shoulders not only the whole world, but him who made it. I am Christ, your King, whom you are serving by this work." The child then vanished, and Christopher later, Lycia the king, tried to win him by riches, tried to scam him by paying him off. Christopher didn't fall for it. The king sent Christopher 2 beautiful women to tempt him, basically. Christopher converted the women to Christianity instead, and as he had already converted thousands, the king ordered him to be killed because of this. Various attempts did fail, but finally, Christopher was beheaded. The Museum of Sacred Art of St. Justine's Church in Rab, Croatia, claims a gold-plated reliquary holding the skull of St. Christopher. Is it or isn't it? I don't know. That's pretty interesting. St. Christopher is a widely popular saint, especially revered by athletes, mariners, ferrymen, and travelers. He holds patronage of things related to travel and traveling, travelers in general, and patronage for archers, bachelors, boatmen and soldiers, bookbinders, epilepsy, floods, fruit dealers, gardeners, motorists, and drivers, sailors, storms, surfers, toothaches, mountaineering, and transportation workers. And a side note, And kind of an interesting fact, according to the medieval Irish Passion of St. Christopher, and the German bishop and poet Walter of Speyer portrayed St. Christopher as being the cynophilic species, which basically was supposedly, this is wild, a dog-headed race of people that ate human flesh. I'm serious. I read this. I've been doing my research. There's information about a dog-headed race of people. Eventually, Christopher met the Christ child, regretted his former behaviors, and received baptism. He, too, was rewarded with a human appearance, whereupon he devoted his life to Christian service, and he became an athlete of God, one of the soldier saints. St. Christopher. You are listening to the Eartheart Radio Show. Here's a song by Michael Logan called St. Christopher at KSKQ Radio.
Calling on St. Christopher, gonna need some help tonight for the long dark road ahead. On my way back to the light, 'cause the path is so unclear, and I'm not sure who to be. All I know is I can't stay here. Won't you please watch over me? 'Cause I'm on my way. Yes, I'm on my way. Yeah, I'm on my way now. It can get so lonely here. Still I know I'm not alone. Do we learn to face our fears before they carve our names in stone? Names in stone. Well, I'm on my way. Yeah, I'm on my way. Well, I'm on my way now. Calling on St. Christopher, gonna need some help tonight.
You're listening to KSKQ and the Eartheart Radio Show, where we are spotlighting St. Christopher. That was Michael Logan with a tune called Calling on St. Christopher. The name Christopher does mean bearer of Christ. There are many prayers to St. Christopher. This one is pretty well known. Dear St. Christopher, protect me today in all my travels along the road's way. Give your warning sign if danger is near, so that I may stop while the path is clear. Beat my windows and direct me through when the vision blurs. From out of the blue, carry me safely to my destined place, like you carried Christ in your close embrace. Amen.
Please
positive news is here. Things aren't as bad as it seems, no matter what they say. News with an agenda is meant to instill fear. True news can instill hope.
It's true, my friends. I'm running out of time. Thanks for being here, but I do have time for one positive news story. Fifth graders hear senior couple's story of racial injustice and take action 60 years later. This is a cool story. Reverend Gilbert and Grace Caldwell were overjoyed about tying the knot 60 years ago. They were then immediately heartbroken, however, by the honeymoon that followed. Back in 1957, the Caldwells got married at a church in North Carolina before driving 8 hours to the Mount Airy Resort in Poconos, Pennsylvania for their honeymoon. Despite having a reservation, the happy couple were forced to drive 8 hours back home after they were turned away from the hotel for being black. The incident spurred the Caldwells to join the civil rights movement, where they were working side by side with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In the decades that followed, Grace and Gilbert continued giving speeches and lectures for schools and organizations about their experience with racial injustice. But when they told that story of their honeymoon to the New Jersey fifth graders at Bear Tavern Elementary back in January of 2018, the kids became especially saddened by this tale. The good part is what follows. Months after seeing the Caldwells speak at the school, all of the fifth graders banded together and wrote letters to the Mount Airy Hotel asking for an all-expenses-paid second honeymoon, and their wish was granted. The Caldwells were very grateful, and what a great story of redemption, right? I've got time for one more thing, man. It's Tom Waits doing Hang On, St. Christopher. You're at the Eartheart Radio Show on KSKQ. Why isn't there nothing happening here? Doesn't seem to want to play on me, guys. Let me try it again. Boy. Nope, it's not wanting to play for me. Maybe I can try it from this other source. I've been having some issues with a couple of these chords not working up here, guys. Thanks for being here at the Eartheart Radio Show. And I'm trying to talk to you as I'm trying to type in the song title, but I don't think it's going to work out too well. It's called Hang On, St. Christopher. Maybe I can get it and play even a little bit of it for you guys. Chords are falling everywhere. Oh, boy. Let's see. Let me try this one here. Yeah, it is Tom Waits. Let's hear a couple minutes.
ABC tonight.
Let's not. I can't play commercials on the air, you guys. Hey, next week it's going to be Baga Baga Mandas. We're going to do a great interview with him that was actually run on September of 2018. I apologize for my mistakes here tonight. I was going to play this Tom Waits song, but to be honest, I really don't have a whole lot of time left, and I really don't want to play a song that's going to get cut off, so maybe I'll shelve that until next week's show. I do want to say thanks a lot to Geza X for coming on Eartheart Radio Show today. I want to thank Kevin Caldwell for all the help he gives me behind the scenes here at KSKQ. And of course, shout out to his Comic Culture radio show. Saturdays is when you can check out Mr. Comic Culture himself at 3 p.m. Yeah, Kevin Caldwell. He also is the host of Dad Hats and Khaki Pants from 4 to 6 on Saturdays. So thanks for being here. You're listening to the only community station worthy of your time, my friends. That's my opinion. I am Shankara Das, a.k.a. Derek Moody. I'll catch you tonight at 7 o'clock on the Church of Rock on this very channel. Thanks for being here. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Adios and have a great day. And I'd like to say the views and opinions expressed during this show are those of the speaker or guest and do not necessarily represent the views of KSKQ, the Multicultural Association of Southern Oregon, or the underwriters of KSKQ. You're listening to KSKQ 89.5 FM Ashland, Oregon, and KSKQ translator K231CW 94.1 FM Medford, Oregon. Signing off. Thanks for being here. Have a great day. Much love.